Hello everyone, my name is Desiree Williford, and today I'll be talking to you about the Community Obesity and Lifestyle Intervention, also known as the COLE intervention. As a brief overview, the current intervention was designed for McDowell County, West Virginia, the southernmost county of the state. According to County Health Rankings data, the McDowell County area ranked 55 out of 55 counties for overall health outcomes, suggesting high need in the area. More specifically, rates of premature death, chronic health conditions, and related negative health behaviors are dramatically higher in McDowell County as compared to other areas of the state. Specific examples include high rates of obesity and physical inactivity. Indicators of poor quality of life are also noteworthy for the county, as evidenced by high numbers of reported poor or fair health days. Economically speaking, many residents live below the federal poverty line, and environmentally speaking, there is poor access to health opportunities such as exercise in the county. Based on this information, there is evidence to suggest that McDowell County may benefit from a health behavior change intervention. Specifically, the current intervention was designed to address the key behavioral factor of physical inactivity and the key environmental factor of access to exercise opportunities. These factors were chosen based on their importance level for McDowell County, as well as research suggesting the high likelihood an intervention targeting these factors can bring about meaningful change for the county. Physical inactivity is also related to several health outcomes such as obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease, just to name a few. As such, it's likely that addressing physical inactivity rates will make other meaningful changes in the county. At this point, you're probably wondering, how do you develop an intervention of this type, and how do you evaluate that intervention with regard to those specific key outcomes? This is when having a model is incredibly important and helpful. For the current intervention, I used the Precede-Proceed model, as developed by Green and colleagues in 1980. This model, which has been adapted over time, focuses on participation and consensus as drivers of behavioral change. This means that when community needs are well understood and targeted, and programming is informed by the community itself, it is more likely to achieve behavior change. The Precede-Proceed model is divided into 8 distinct phases. The first 4 phases are the precede phases of the model. The latter 4 phases are the proceed phases of the model. These will be discussed in further detail as we continue on with this presentation. Before discussing the specific components of each phase of the Precede-Proceed model, I wanted to provide a visual overview of the entire model. As you can see from the top right-hand corner to the top left-hand corner, the first 4 phases focus on assessment in the Precede-Proceed model. This includes thorough assessment of social, epidemiological, educational and ecological, and administrative and policy and design considerations. Moving down to the bottom left-hand corner, you will see that phase 5 involves implementation of the intervention, followed by the evaluation phases, including process, impact, and outcome evaluations. The middle portion of this model figure shows the important components of each phase, which will later be discussed. The first 2 assessment phases of the precede portion of the model include social assessment and epidemiological assessment. Phase 1 involves assessment of key indicators of perceived health and quality of life, whereas Phase 2, epidemiological assessment, focuses on obtaining a deeper understanding of the interrelations between health, genetics, behavior, and environmental factors. Examples of information obtained by this type of assessment is the information that I provided in my brief overview of McDowell County, West Virginia. Moving on to Phase 3, educational and ecological assessment, this focuses on addressing 3 key factors. First, predisposing factors are modifiable psychosocial factors. Examples in the current intervention include knowledge and self-efficacy. For example, in McDowell County, there may be poor rates of knowledge around the implications of physical inactivity, as well as decreased confidence in abilities to bring about behavioral change. With regard to reinforcing factors, these are factors that increase or decrease behavior. In McDowell County, poor community or social support may influence the likelihood an individual engages in physical inactivity. Finally, with regard to enabling factors, these are factors which facilitate individual or group motivation to enact behavioral change. In McDowell County, concerns around morality and economic barriers are likely to enable physical inactivity as well as poor access to exercise opportunities. With the current intervention in mind, I have created a logic model to help explain the information I previously discussed. Specifically looking at the left-hand side of this model, making changes in the key behavioral factor of insufficient rates of physical activity participation and the environmental factor of limited access to exercise opportunity is related to changes in predisposing, reinforcing, and enabling factors as described on the slide. Moving to the right side of the logic model, making changes in the key behavioral factor and environmental factor then leads to related health changes and related changes in health-related quality of life. On to Phase 4, Administrative and Policy Assessment and Intervention Alignment. This focuses on addressing key policy, regulatory, and organizational factors. With regard to policy and regulatory factors, these include the internal and external rules and regulations, as well as policies of organizations, intervention sites, cities, and towns, among others, which may impact the current intervention. For the current coal intervention, we have collaborated with McDowell County Commission, including the Planning Committee Board and local mayors, to reduce unanticipated barriers to obtaining funding and accessing and delivering the intervention. Phase 4 also includes the assessment of organizational factors which may influence the intervention. These include administrative issues for an organization, including its structure, procedures, culture, and the availability of resources needed to implement the intervention. Some factors pertinent to the coal intervention include finances, time, personnel, skills, training, and space. Using finances and culture as an example, the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Services has been dedicating time to obtaining funding and resources to address obesity and related health concerns. As such, the current intervention is in line with these organizational factors and goals. Phase 5 focuses on the specific implementation of the intervention. As such, I've taken this as an opportunity to discuss the key components of the current coal intervention. The first component includes 2 educational sessions. These sessions, each 60 minutes in duration, focus on addressing the key pre-factors and other factors likely to lead to behavior change. These modules are described on the left side of this slide. The second component includes the delivery of community exercise events, each about 60 to 75 minutes in duration. Several opportunities will be offered per month and held at indoor and outdoor locations across the county. Examples include a free day at a local gym and Zumba in the park. Before moving on to the evaluation phases of the Precede-Proceed model, I thought it would be important to take this time to discuss program evaluation designs. In particular, there are 3 types of experimental designs, including pre-experimental, quasi-experimental, and true experimental designs. Pre-experimental designs are the most basic approach as they do not include a control group. When you are not including a control group, there are certain threats to reliability and validity that exist. Reliability is the trustworthiness and the consistency of your results, whereas validity is really an assessment of whether or not you're measuring what you're intending to measure. When you don't have a control group, you run into problems, such as not knowing if there are differences between those included in your intervention and those that do not. It makes it difficult to also assess long-term program impact. However, this approach is useful for assessing immediate or short-term impact of your intervention. It also is associated with decreased cost as compared to other design approaches. True experimental and quasi-experimental designs, on the other hand, attempt to test cause and effect relations. True experimental designs involve random assignment, which is the gold standard for reducing concerns related to internal reliability and validity. However, there are some cons of this approach, including that it's timely and costly, and there is reduced generalizability or external validity due to strict experimental control. This means that your findings may not generally apply to the real-life conditions in which your intervention is designed to be delivered. Quasi-experimental designs do not involve random assignment and therefore are often more likely to represent the real-life conditions in which you're implementing your intervention. As such, this is associated with improved external validity or generalizability. However, a con of this approach is that you do not have that strict experimental control, and therefore you have decreased control over assessing extraneous factors and monitoring threats to internal validity. Despite its limitations, the quasi-experimental design approach will be used to evaluate the COAL intervention. This will include the collection of both qualitative and quantitative data. With regard to our comparison or control group, we will be using a comparable county, specifically Mingo County, West Virginia, one of McDowell County's neighbors. A standard of care comparison approach will be utilized. This means that we will be modeling the typical standard of care for assessing physical inactivity in Mingo County. Specifically, in Mingo County and across the U.S., most approaches to addressing physical activity include simple education. As such, the CDC has designed a handout that is available online and print to all states in the United States. As such, Mingo County has access to this information, and that will be the only intervention delivered to our control group. Moving on, Phase 6 begins the evaluation portion of this model. Specifically, process evaluation focuses on the assessment of intervention delivery and activities. As such, this will be assessed with fidelity checklists, post-session feedback forms, and post-intervention evaluation forms. This will assess key process variables such as consistency of the intervention delivered across interventionists, the session activities and perceptions of acceptability and feasibility, attendance data, as well as general evaluation of what is happening according to participants. Phase 7, on the other hand, focuses on impact evaluation, or the assessment of intervention effectiveness. In other words, did it meet its behavioral and environmental goals, and what were the changes in key pre-factors? Impact evaluation will occur across multiple time points as delineated on this slide, and will include assessment of subjective and objective data, as measured by surveys and the number of exercise opportunities available in the community pre- and post-intervention. Moving on to Phase 8, outcome evaluation, this focuses on assessing changes in short and long-term health status and quality of life. Again, this will be assessed across multiple time points as delineated on the slide. The focus of the current outcome evaluation will be on shorter-term outcomes, such as changes in physical activity level. This will be denoted by physical activity participation included on the physical activity stages of CRAGE questionnaire, as well as county surveillance data during the 12-month period post-intervention. While our goal of our intervention is to also influence longer-term outcomes, it is important to note that it is impossible to assess the long-term health status and mortality and morbidity changes in the county, as well as longer-term quality of life changes, due to restrictions in time and resources of the current intervention. However, we will be able to assess more immediate changes in quality of life via survey data. In summary, I want to provide a visual application of the pre-seed-proceed model as it applies to the current COLE intervention. As you can see, I have delineated the pre-seed assessment phases, the implementation of educational sessions and physical activity exercise events, and the evaluation phases and important components of the intervention. These have already been described in this presentation. However, I will leave this slide up for just a few moments so that you can review and remind yourself of the key components of this intervention. On this slide, you will find the references I used in the creation of the current presentation. I thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today, and I look forward to seeing your comments and questions. Have a great day.